I always like to add a thick layer of acrylic paint so I can cover up the entire canvas and leave no gaps. I choose a shade lighter than the color that is to go over it. Sometimes I choose a darker shade. So in today's painting, I am aiming to create a dark cloudy background. So I'm using black and white. I'm randomly laying in these two colors, spraying some water onto it, and then going over it lightly with a soft mop brush. Note that this is not the kind of mop brush that you use with watercolors. Most of these brushes are expensive, and as I'm using them only for blending, I didn't buy the expensive ones but rather chose to buy powder blending makeup brushes. But when you buy these brushes, make sure they don't shed too much bristles or hair. I'd also like to point out that you shouldn't be spraying too much water, and also use the mop brush with a very light hand so you don't overblend it. And do not keep using the same wet mop brush again and again. If you don't want to own too many of them, then you'll have to make do with one or two mop brushes, but you need to keep washing them and drying them with a hairdryer again and again while painting. And that could be very tasking. Here I'm making changes over the background after it has completely dried. Another alternative to mop brushes is a sponge or a sponge brush. You could add more highlights after your background is completely dry. Now I'm blocking in this area evenly. This is going to be a cobblestone ground. Make sure the horizon is a straight line if you are creating distance. Now I'm just creating oval shapes with a filbert brush over this. You will notice that I'm not just using one color. I'm using a combination of yellow ochre, Naples yellow, burnt sienna and some unbleached titanium. Also, looking back on this, I realized that I should have chosen a darker background, maybe a dark brown or raw umber. Notice that to create depth and a proper perspective, I'm creating smaller ovals here so that they appear at a distance. This is what gives a natural, realistic appearance. The size of these ovals will determine distance. Give it a try and you'll see for yourself. If you create slightly bigger ovals at the back, you will notice that the distance appears to be a little lesser. Now I'm adding some dark shadows. Notice how it instantly adds depth. Just creating more depth. You can add some highlights onto the cobbles if you want to give the impression of light hitting some of the cobblestones. I wasn't too particular in adding highlights in this painting. You decide a light source and imagine it hitting the stones in that direction. I created highlights by painting with unbleached titanium over it. You can create many layers of this if you want. I also intend adding a little bit of moss and some grass into this later on. Just experiment with this depending on the kind of painting that you're doing. You can choose the colors for yourself. You could also do the glazing technique. I finally airbrushed a bit of black paint over the horizon and some corners to give that depth. If you don't own an airbrush, you could do the same by glazing with some thinned acrylic paint. So try this out, and if you do, then do send me the pictures. I'd really love to see them. Well, you notice even after that bit of airbrushing that I did, I also added some highlights because I felt it dulled it down a little bit. So I needed some more highlights. Thank you so much for watching. Do come back to watch the rest of the painting next week. I will be creating a mossy tree over it. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please do so. And thank you so much for watching. Have a nice day.